Gents, a weekly geeky blog. I am your host and writer behind 99geek.ca, Andrew Geczy. As primarily a fiction writer, releasing chapters of my books in weekly chunks on my Patreon, like episodes of TV shows when I'm not trying to make ends meet. Whoa. It's, I'll read it as it's written. Trying to make ends meet, trying to make ends meet, trying to make ends meet. How did I say that three times? All right, let's try that again. Um, Wow, this is a long sentence. How far back does it go? As primarily a fiction writer, releasing chapters of my books in weekly chunks on my Patreon, like episodes of TV shows when I'm not trying to make ends meet in what feels like a poverty nightmare, I wanted my brand, 99% Geek, to offer more than just my writing, pulling from my many interests and passions. I don't have much to offer in the way of talent besides my writing, but I'm passionate about pop culture and try to keep myself as up to date on politics, science, and art as I can. Being a huge TV nerd, I run down the best shows of the week, go over all the major news headlines for people who have maybe gotten too tired to follow regular news, breaking it down and expanding it for people who might feel unable to follow along. And before anything else, I spotlight something cool and geeky for the week. Remember, you can follow along by going to patreon.com/99geek. This is Geekly Weekly number 88 for the week of Friday, March 5th. And this week's highlight is The Weekend. This might come as a shocker to people, but I don't watch sports very much, least of all the Super Bowl. In fact, I would even say I openly stand opposed to football. It's full of concussions and injuries, and the league doesn't seem to care that uh, their players are dying at young ages or suffering crazy permanent brain damage and shit like that. Like it's fucked up some of the stories you hear about that kind of stuff, and so I don't want to support it. Um, and so I do as little to support as I can. So when I heard that The Weeknd killed it at the Super Bowl, I was a little curious, but I didn't jump to check it out. What finally pushed me over the edge was seeing the performances everywhere else. I don't know if it's a they or a he. I go back and forth. I feel like it's I think The Weeknd is the band. I don't know what his name is. And I could be wrong about that because all you ever really see is him. I don't know. I could look it up. We could look it up right now. The Weeknd, man or band? Google. No, I'm not a robot. Apparently, his name is Abel Makonnen Tesfaye, born 1990, so he's 2 years younger than me. And he is known professionally as The Weeknd. So it's a dude, and he's Canadian. Hoorah! Congratulations to Canada. Go Canada. We're awesome. So cool. Awesome. I didn't even know he was Canadian. We've learned something new today, and I feel special. So yeah, that's super awesome. So I kept hearing his songs, especially that Blinding Lights song, and it got really stuck in my head. And I decided one night, really late at night, that I was gonna just look it up on YouTube because I wanted to hear it again. And I came across a bunch of his performances, so I started watching his performances, and they're really impressive. I gave some links to some of his best performances. There's one he does on a skyscraper that looks really cool and has like fireworks behind him and everything, and it's awesome. And there's helicopters flying around. It's like, what the fuck? I saw one person be like, "Oh, I bet it's on a green screen." It's like, there's no way this is on a green screen. You can hear the helicopters. They wouldn't. There wouldn't be a reason for you to hear the helicopters if it was on a green screen. They would just make them silent. They had no choice but to have because helicopters make lots of noise. But yeah, it's jaw dropping. And the second link here that I don't well I guess I can click on them, but I'm not gonna play it because if I play it, then it will um, mark me as trouble. But yeah, I'm just gonna close that. But the SNL, no, not the SNL, the Super Bowl performance is the second thing. Um, so and I think everybody should watch it, honestly. If you haven't, if you weren't one of the millions of people who watched it as it happened, like me, and you were just watching, I don't know, something else. I was like, do I want to admit what I was watching? Nah, it's fine. We're cool. We'll say it was WandaVision. But yeah, The Weeknd seems awesome, and I like his music. I've added a bunch of his songs to my iTunes. All his best stuff. He goes through like a melody of his songs in the Super Bowl performance, and it's honestly, I really enjoyed was it last year that Lady Gaga did it, or was it I think it was last year she did it, and that was awesome. And he did it this year, and that's awesome. And I enjoyed these performances as much as I don't enjoy the Super Bowl. I appreciate when people go all out like that. Apparently, $7 million is what he spent on that, and it shows, and it's great. I love it. So check it out. Go to patreon.com/99geek. You can find the links and click on them, or you can just search on them on YouTube. But why would you want to do that? That's no fun. Moving on from there to the Geekly Weekly TV rankings. There's a lot. There's a lot. There's 13, unlucky 13. 13 shows this week. It's building up. I don't think it's done building up either. I'm pretty sure there are more shows still to air, so this could be fun. I know next week we're getting to South Park just for one episode only, but I'm so excited. I love South Park so much. That's my shit. That's like my shit. I can't wait. That's gonna be. I bet you anything that's gonna be number one. If there's no doubt that that's gonna be number one, that shows this incredible. Apparently, Butters is gonna be Q. He's gonna like find Q. I can't wait. I'm so excited. But starting at the bottom of this list, starting at the bottom, but the home T. I don't know how that song goes. I'm not a Drake fan. But Debris is at the bottom of the list with 1.5 stars at number 13. I will not be watching a second episode, I can promise you that. This was an awful pilot with very little interest in telling its story or introducing its characters so much as it was interested in just showing us weird shit and then throwing a bunch of random exposition at us. All the important details in the pilot were already known by the characters off screen, and they would just drop information like Deus Ex Machinas to get them back to the next scene. It was really frustrating and annoying. And then they'd show another creepy thing, and then it's back to a more random exposition. I recognized the formula like 10 minutes into the episode. I tweeted about it, and then it just kept going with the same formula. Like, is this just this is gonna be the whole episode? Like, oh my god, I couldn't believe it. It was all tell, no show, except for creepy shit, random creepy shit. The visual effects were great, fantastic even, and the acting and production all seemed to be firing on all cylinders, but they had nothing to work with the script. It was dead on arrival. So that was number 13, Debris. I remember last week I kind of was like, the trailer looked interesting, but the show was not. I was very disappointed with it. It could have places to go, but the pilot didn't make me want to go on that journey with them at all. So I apologize to the makers of Debris. Moving on from there to number 12 on the list, Family Guy with 2.5 stars. It was a pretty poor episode of Family Guy this week, though there were some pretty strong running gags. The cutaway that lasted forever was one of the most insane ones they've done in a while. That's true, I remember that. Do I say what it was called? It had to be in Stitches. They also had a funny running gag where Meg had to be under constant supervision. It was all about like the episode was crap, but the running gags were great. Because they can never really find the balance there. Um, and people would keep stopping and just being like, is that Meg sneaking away? That can't be good, right? It was amusing and might have even earned the show 3 stars if the joke hadn't fizzled out at the end. There was a funny moment where she manages to escape at the very end. I'm like, oh, this is going to be funny. And I thought it was going to lead to something, but it didn't really. It just led to she passes some squirrels so that they say the same thing everybody else says. Like, wait, is that Meg? She shouldn't be alone, should she? That's not good. Like they always have the same reaction to her. Just it's weird. It's really weird. It was a weird episode. But again, the long episode running gags were fantastic. Moving on from there to number 11, The Walking Dead also got 2.5 stars, just barely better than Family Guy, I imagine. I wish I could give the first episode back after forever a high rating, but I went back and forth between moderately engaged and bored out of my mind. There were multiple scenes in storage containers that seemed to drag on forever. It was just like, first of all, I couldn't believe it when they were like, let's clear the storage container of zombies so we can sleep here. In this place where zombies have been oozing for like who knows how many months. Let's just clear it out and sleep here. So that was gross and on its own. But then hanging out in the storage crates, we were all just going on and on and on. Maggie was going on and on anyway, as Daryl just sat there nodding his head. I'm pretty sure I zoned out and missed her entire first speech with Daryl, and yet I don't feel like I missed anything at all. The stuff with their village burning was all right, but what's up with that guy with the mask? They never explained the guy with the mask. I gotta know. I liked some of the tension of them going through the forest, and I liked the two child actors, both Judith in the beginning and Herschel in the end. Other than that, though, this episode was pretty much meh. A whole bunch of meh. And I mean, you might be like, well, what else was meh beside the storage containers? But I don't think you understand how much of the episode was spent just sitting in storage containers with Maggie saying random shit and then people just staring at her and nodding and like reacting and not saying anything. It's God, it was so frustrating. I don't think anyone liked it. I didn't see many positive reviews, so there you go. Number 10 on the list, The Equalizer, 3 stars. I wasn't sure it got higher than The Walking Dead. So there you go. I wasn't sure if I would make it through the episode, but again, it got higher than The Walking Dead. I care less and less about the main characters, but the show kinda doesn't care about them either, and that's part of the problem. Oh, procedurals. Gotta love doing the same thing over and over again. Though this time it was some rich dude, and I don't think she actually fought anyone all episode. It was kind of nice they involved the bearded guy, the old bearded guy, not the techie bearded guy. There's a lot of bearded guys on. Apparently, all the guys have facial hair on the show. But yeah, facial hair. Now he can not get development either. It was fine though. It kept my interest till the end, so it stays on the list for another week. That's 3 stars at the 10 spot. We have 9 more shows to go through. This week was insane. I kind of love it. Number 9 on the list, The Flash at 3 stars. It was an alright episode of the show, though not a great season premiere, which was to be expected after they had to end the season early last year because of COVID. What wasn't expected was that the entire premiere would basically be a thinly veiled write-off episode for Wells, Harrison Wells, or Nash Wells, this one was called, who is suddenly leaving the show without any warning. So if his words "run, Barry, run" in the trailer were exciting to you and got you pumped for a new season, no, that was just me? Oh, okay. Those were his last words before disintegrating into nothing. Sorry, I just spoiled that. The whole episode was telegraphing his death, bringing back all the different like I knew pretty much from the beginning, oh, this is gonna be the one where he dies, isn't it? Right from the start, it's like, oh, this is gonna be the one where he dies. Everything's about him suddenly. Okay, this is great. So I'm not really spoiling anything at all. It was all telegraphed. They bring back all the different Wells and make them the focus of the episode. It did feel like an alright, though not amazing send-off for Wells, even if it took over the premiere to the point of making the episode feel anticlimactic somewhat. I gotta admit, it didn't leave me super excited for the future of this show. I know a lot of people want to see it canceled. I just want to see it do better. And maybe a clearing of the board is what it needed. But he was my favorite character, and I'm gonna miss him. It's too bad. Here's to you, I should know his name. I'm trying to think of the name of the actor. I don't want to have to Google it, but we're Googling it. It's like the other guy. Kavanaugh. Tom Kavanaugh. It's spelled differently than the other Kavanaugh. But yeah, Tom Kavanaugh, that's his name. That's why I didn't know how to say it. Moving on from there to number 8 on the list, The Goldbergs with 3 stars. It wasn't a great episode of The Goldbergs this week, but it was somewhat of a touching one, and apparently it was better than The Flash. And it had some funny moments. Another episode where the plot was a letdown, but the characters and dynamics shone through. There wasn't much besides laughs keeping this episode up, but sometimes I feel too harsh on this show. I used 1-0 instead of 2. What a writing nightmare. It's a sitcom in the most generic ways, and it brings the laughs. What more should I ask for? It was a short write-up for Goldbergs. I was like, cool, whatever. It was fine. Moving on from there, number 7 on the list. Black Lightning with 3.5 stars. It got better than The Flash and The Walking Dead. What? I thought I already wrote the review for this. I think it got deleted at some point. But every once in a while, these things just disappear under my nose, and I feel like I'm going crazy. It was a fine episode this week, even though I was still bored for long swaths. It also felt weird the way Anissa took her girlfriend into the field right after she'd just been put into a coma after being taken into the field. Like, literally, I think it was It wasn't even like the girlfriend was like, "Hey, take me with you." It was Anissa was like, "Come on with me," and I'm like, "What are you doing? She's gonna get into a coma again. Don't do it. Stay home. It's safer." And there was some weird drama with them, and that was weird. And her girlfriend was obviously the one on the right, and she acted weird for no reason, just to drama. I don't know, drama. But honestly, it was surprisingly the best episode of the season. Tobias still remains one of the better aspects of the show, just eating up the screen. Sometimes I wonder if the only enjoyment I get from the show is from the over-the-top way half the cast delivers their lines. Half the cast delivers their lines normal, like they're normal people, and then the other cast just thinks they're in a totally different thing, and just every time they're on screen, it's fun, and it's weird that way because you'd think the other side would be the side that you would be more down with, but yeah, it's the people being ridiculous that it's like at least that's enjoyable. Um, that said, this episode also seemed to actually pay off a lot of building storylines, which is a first. So far this season, it's been a lot of wheels just sort of spinning for no reason. And finally, this episode, they caught some gravel and just went off, which is fine, which is good. Um, Making this episode feel like one of the more consequential episodes of the season, even if we all know that Jen is still alive. At the end of the episode, she kind of explodes into nothing, and it's like, okay, so it's like Dr. Manhattan, where he exploded into nothing and then comes back again. We get it. You don't even have to explain it next episode. And honestly, knowing the show, half 50% chance they don't. They honestly just sweep things under the, like, I swear to God, there was the girlfriend that woke up from a coma. I swear to God, there's one episode that ended with her being awake from a coma. Like it was, she walked in and the person was awake and turned into a leopard or something. And then suddenly this episode, she wakes up again. It's okay, cool, whatever. Let's just forget all about that last thing. Anyway, moving on from there. Number 6 on the list, Superman and Lois, 3.5 stars as well. A lot of 3.5 stars this week. Next one too. At least it was better than Black Lightning. Parts of this episode were amazing, and I'm shocked how good the visual effects look in this show. Honestly, not as good as Debris. Debris had some amazing looking effects. Just couldn't save it. But the flying in Superman and Lois looks incredible. The action scenes are top notch for a CW show. That said, there were other points in this episode that bored me to tears. I feel like they fumbled the family drama this week, trying too hard to manufacture conflict. The show picked up a bit, and I found myself intrigued by Lois's arc. Her father seems to have a good arc as well. I'm somewhat, I'm somewhat uncomfortable with him knowing Clark's secret. A new dynamic between Superman and the usual the General Lane character, but it seems the show wants to explore that, and that could lead to some interesting places. All in all, this episode looked pretty and can pull off both Superman and Lois well. That is to say, like, Lois's character, there are things about Lois's character that makes her unique, and this show pulls it off reasonably well. I've been impressed in that character. It's everything around it that's sort of bringing it down. That said, if there's some sort of hot fuzz twist coming involving Smallville, all the frustrating elephants, all those frustrating elephants. Get out of here! I told you I didn't want you anymore. Damn elephants, so frustrating. Well, they might end up paying off, is what I'm saying, because there are certain weird moments that make you wonder if like there's a Stepford thing going on, like there's everyone's been brainwashed, or there's a secret cult like in Hot Fuzz or something like that. At one point, the firefighter husband of Lana Lang is talking to the mayor, and the mayor's just like, "There's a town meeting tonight," and the firefighter's like, "Whoa, yeah, we're going to a town meeting. Yeah, I'll see you there." They like high five. It's like, what was that? Nobody gets that excited for a town meeting. It was a really like it was one of those like, so then after the town meeting they're totally gonna go to that strip club and then sacrifice virgins in their basement to appease Satan or whatever the fuck. I can't wait for that to be revealed. That'll be fun. Moving on from there, I just convinced so many people this. Anyone listening to this podcast, they're like, "Man, I gotta watch Superman and Lois," and then you're gonna be really disappointed when there is no cult sacrificing virgins to Satan. Moving on from there to the number 5 spot, Batwoman. with 3.5 stars. It was a fine episode this week, even enjoyable at points, but also bordered on laughable, especially with the way Mary and her dad survived that crash without any broken bones. And he got stabbed multiple times. And he was just fine at the end of the episode. She's walking around with an obvious concussion. She was like, she couldn't even stand for a long period of time. She had like blood down the side of her face and like obviously concussed. And she's just like walking around talking to people, totally like not giving a fuck. And then Batwoman is dying of kryptonite poisoning, but she's still fighting crime because everyone on the show is apparently hard as fuck. The stuff with Alice was enjoyable but inconsequential. And the villain of the episode was just a dude with anger issues who was really bad at acting like he had anger issues. This episode was good despite itself because it has so many great characters and actors holding it up. So like I just had to laugh when Mary's dad just got stabbed twice, and then at the end of the episode, he's barking orders at his team back at HQ in his office, being a whatever, and it's like, did you even get medical attention? You were stabbed in the gut twice. What the fuck? They just didn't seem to care. There's literally one point where he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I was trained in resistance tactics. I could hold out for like 20 more hours." It's like, yeah, I could just keep getting stabbed. It's not a big deal. It's just being stabbed. It was weird and fun. A lot of 3-star episodes this week. So Batwoman got number 5 just because the characters are so much fun to watch. Be ridiculous. Even more so than Black Lightning. Actually, I don't know if more so than Black Lightning, but I feel like there's more in Black Lightning that brings it down than in Batwoman. Anyway, in the number 4 spot, Saturday Night Live with 3.5 stars as well. This wasn't a bad episode this week, with a lot of sketches feeling like they would be bombs, only to actually end up being pretty funny. I did feel the quality degraded over the night. The last sketch wasn't the worst of the night, though the last sketch wasn't the worst of the night, even. So it degraded over the night, but the last sketch wasn't the worst of the night. And while a bunch of sketches were a little too awkward to be highlights, nothing was offensively bad. Just alright. I enjoyed the host. Nick Jonas is one of those performers who I like more as a person than for their performances. In this case, I'm not a fan of his music, but I find him chill and relatable and can even be funny. Also, I felt his second song was a little stronger than his first. It almost had a bop to it. I don't remember it now, so it wasn't that great. Finally, the Weekend Update had some funny jokes, and the Marjorie Taylor Greene impression wasn't bad, but Keenan's character brought it down for sure. That sketch with the amusement park ride was the most awkward sketch I've ever seen, and my pick for weakest sketch of the night. I laughed at the final line, though, where he says, "My name's Robert." Moving on from there. Number 3, Are You Afraid of the Dark? 4 stars. We're in the top 3. I forgot to do that. Bum, 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 bum. I was thinking about adding music because I brought up my guitar and I tuned it and everything. And then I was like, I have no musical ability. I forgot about that part. But if you really want to hear music, at the beginning and at the podcasts and segments and things like that, then say something and maybe I will try harder to come up with something dumb. Anyway, Are You Afraid of the Dark? 4 stars. Not too bad for Are You Afraid of the Dark. This is one of the better episodes. I think here I'll just read. This was a better episode than last week. Even with one actually scary moment where this was a better episode this week than last. Even with one actually scary moment where I thought the curly-haired girl would be killed. There, that sentence made perfect sense. I'm just a loser who can't read. The ending was cool in its creepiness, and the flashbacks were somewhat interesting. I'm disappointed that we have all but confirmation that the protagonist is not gay, even after it turned out Connor owned girly board games, and at the end of the episode, the protagonist weepily rushes into Connor's arms. Seriously, he's not gay? He has a crush on the redhead? Seriously? I mean, I would too in his position. Also, after I wrote this, I actually had a conversation with the creator of the show. So we have confirmation from the creator of the television show. This is almost like actual reporting right now. He's not gay. The protagonist is not gay. I was like, was there ever a chance he could have been gay? And the guy was like, no, the character is not gay. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Sorry I said anything. He was actually a really nice guy, and we talked about a bit about other things and representation and things like that, and he's gay, and I, me, and so we talked and related, and it was a nice conversation, and I appreciated the time I spent talking to him, and it was cool. And yeah, he just like I think what happened was he liked one of my tweets, and I was like, oh, if he likes it, why don't I try talking to him? And he was more than happy to talk back to me, and it was an interesting conversation. I appreciated it. So that was cool. And I'm not done reading this, am I? Do do do. Anyway, the flirting with the redheaded girl was kind of adorable, so I don't consider it a negative of the episode that he's not gay, even if it's a negative to the show, in my opinion. Anyway, all around a beyond decent but far from flawless episode. Even though I don't think I already discussed what made it so, but there you go. Too focused on how that kid wasn't gay. God damn it. Anyway, moving on from there to the number 2 spot, American Gods. I don't think it's ever been this high this whole season. It got 4.5 stars at the number 2 spot. I'm surprised at how good this episode was. I held off watching it for days and days, and then watched it really considering dropping it from my lineup. I watched it after Debris. I literally was like, well, Debris's got to be better than American Gods. And I watched, I was like, nope. And I went to American Gods. I was like, wow, this is actually not bad. And I ended up loving it. There was very little about this I didn't enjoy, besides a brief interlude with the funeral home guy. I can't remember his name. I love Shadow's romance with the mom, and it really came to the foreground here, and their love scene was beautiful, and he seemed so happy, and it was nice to see and adorable. Cordelia had a fun arc this week. Like, there was one moment where after they had sex, where he just sort of, she's sleeping, and he leans over and just like puts his head against her, and it's just adorable, and he just smiles, and it's like cute. Cordelia had a fun arc this week, learning the truth about Wednesday, and while his arc wasn't great, it was weird and interesting, and ended with Marilyn Manson's character gutted off screen, which was nice to see. Even Laura's random side thing with Mr. World was weird and intriguing, and certainly engaging. It was even nice seeing Salim do stuff. This was a really strong episode, focusing on the show's new strengths and staying away from most of the bullshit that had been getting to me. I'm super impressed. Well done, American Gods. I think it's the episode before the finale, and they finally brought it together in a way that I liked. Or maybe all the other shows just weren't that strong. I don't know. Moving into the number 1 spot, WandaVision with 5 stars, 5 whole digits. This was an amazing episode. I'm glad this wasn't the finale. I have such a hard time keeping track of when finales are these days. I really thought this one was going to be the finale. It's waiting for me right now. I could watch it as soon as this is done. Can't wait. That said, the dive into Scarlet Witch's past and psyche was beyond welcome and made for a fascinating, gripping, longer than normal episode. I love the way that the show played with aspects of her past we already knew, taking those aspects and building the narrative around them instead of retconning a new origin for her. I thought it was very well done, and completely fitting in with the rest of the MCU. Catherine Hahn just ate the scenery in such a great way. This episode was pure gold, and the sort of perfection I trust MCU to bring me. Bravo! Can't wait for next week, and this time it will be the finale, right? And that was the TV rankings. Da, 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 da. Womp womp. Moving on from there to the Geekly predictions, where I predict 3 things, but I can't count to 3 very well, so there's 4 this week. Starting at the top, South Park is, as I said, I love South Park. It's coming to Comedy Central on Wednesday, so I cannot wait. I'm gonna hold my breath till then. Maybe I'll hold my breath after the podcast. It's super exciting. As I said, Butters, it could be cute. That's gonna be cute. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. I can't wait. I know very little about it. I did watch the 30-second trailer, and hopefully there's a lot more to it than that. Who knows? Maybe it could end up being a bummer, but I doubt it. I'm gonna love the show. This episode, this quarantine special, is it longer than normal? I think it's like an hour or something. I hope so. Moving on from there to the number 2 spot, Raya and the Last Dragon is on Disney Plus for a fee. You have to pay, I think, $30 American or $1 million Canadian. I think that's how the conversion works for these people. And that's available today. Should be available right now. I could go over there and spend them $30 I don't have. I have like 47 cents in my account right now. So yay me. And that's until next Tuesday. And something else that comes out on Tuesday, Apex Legends on Switch. It's probably gonna be free to play because I think it's been free to play on everything else. So you can download it on Tuesday if you haven't played it yet, or if you love it and you really want it on your Switch, you can get it on the Switch. It's already on everything else. Moving on from there, Chaos Walking is a movie that has Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley in it. The trailer looked kind of interesting, but the reviews are coming up somewhat short, so don't expect too much from it. And there's another little snaggle. You might be like, well, you haven't mentioned where it is. It seems to be that it is theaters only. It's not available on any streaming service. They decided, COVID, schmovid, we got this. So they're totally just trying to infect as many people as possible and throwing it in the theaters. And good luck to them on that. And if you want to go to the movie theaters to watch a movie that's getting middling reviews, then good luck to you as well. Moving on to the Geekly news headlines. That's news from the past week that you need to know. Starting at the top, starting at the bottom of the home team. Sorry. Extremism in the US military is not new. Sure. This is a story on Vice.com by Matthew Galt and Leah Feiger. One of those. Absolutely one of those. And it's a story from February 26, 2021. And it begins thus. Kyle Bibby was an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps when he saw a swastika carved into the dashboard of a military truck. Bibby, a black veteran who spent 7 years in the Marines and 4 years at the Naval Academy, remembers asking the Marine driving the vehicle what it was doing there. Literally, a swastika. Like already, this story is like I'm very intrigued. He just looks at me and his eyes get wide, Bibby recalled. It was not uncommon for me to, find a swastika carved into this or that, here and there, said Bibby. More water. Water's good. Water's great. I like water. At another point during his career, Bibby was called the N-word by a lower-ranking Marine. While there were some consequences for the Marine, Bibby said that the court-martial gave him the equivalent of a slap on the wrist. Later, one of the officers who sat on the court-martial implied to Bibby that he must have done something wrong to warrant that kind of response. What could anyone possibly do to warrant that kind of response? When you have members of the military who still view the flippancy of maybe throwing out a racial slur just because they drink a little too much, or who think it's funny to carve a swastika, I can't. The only people who think it's funny to carve a swastika are people who do not think Nazis are as serious as they are, and that's a problem. It's because the military hasn't made it clear to them that it's not okay. I don't think that's going to stop people who like to carve swastikas into things, said Bibby. They know what things they can't do. They know damn well not to put their hands in their pocket on the quarter deck or the parade deck, silly things like that. During my time in the military was significantly more strict on people who put their hands in their pocket on uniform than people who were connected to white supremacist organizations. That's fucked, you're right. This lack of oversight and a certain unwillingness to confront extremism is why Bibby, other veterans, and military experts told Vice News they were unsurprised to see so many veterans present at the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. The question for us was how many, said Bibby, of watching the insurrection and wondering about the veterans involved in the attack. This wasn't missed, it was ignored. For a long time, the military has been getting warnings about the infiltration of extremists and extremist organizations, particularly white nationalist organizations and such, and the coal has not been heeded. Veteran I don't even quite know what that means. Veteran Catherine Smith is, by her calculation, the 10th black woman to graduate from the United States Air Force Academy. During her time there, people whispered racist slurs in my ear, she said, and told her that she had taken the place of a man. Jeez. She is now an organizer with Bibi at Common Defense and has continued working on behalf of veterans. That's good. That's really good. The insurrection, Smith said, while not surprising, sort of crushed my whole spirit. It's embarrassing, it's painful, but it also reinforced what I think black people and black veterans have known for a long time. Extremism is a pernicious and perennial problem in the US military. Yes, I can say the word pernicious. It's also a problem that the Pentagon has no idea how to handle. In January, the Joint Chiefs of Staff issued a rare statement condemning extremism in the military, and on February 3rd, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, the first black Pentagon chief, ordered a 60-day stand down of America's armed forces while it addresses these issues. I like it. In his confirmation hearing, Austin swore to rid our ranks of racists, good idea, and in a video posted last week, Austin doubled down on his commitment, telling service members who encountered extremism to share those experiences with leaders. Still part of the military's historical reticence to speak out. And what makes recent statements so unprecedented, veterans say, is the military's commitment to maintaining an apolitical stance. To dismantle and disfront white supremacy in the military would mean confronting that position. The military tries to fancy itself as apolitical, said Bibi, but I think it's not so much apolitical, but that the military is more politically averse. While Bibi has been pleased to see these calls to action, he also thinks that there ultimately needs to be accountability in military leadership. There needs to be a command culture change across the military, he said. The military has not made stopping extremism a priority, and people feel that they know that they don't need to ask the command structure in the military whether or not it's okay to be a white supremacist. They know it's not, but they also know no one's checking, and if they keep it quiet, they'll be just fine. Extremism in the military is not new, but the Capitol Hill insurrection on January 6th highlighted the need for action. In January, NPR reported that 1 in 5 of those arrested in connection with the riots had a military record. That is actually kind of crazy. As of this writing, 230 people have been charged, but only 31 of those have ties to extremist groups such as Proud Boys or Oath Keepers. But of those 31, 11 are veterans. So what they're saying is, of the extremists who were arrested, a third of those were veterans. In 2020, a Military Times survey found that more than 1/3 of active duty troops said they witnessed examples of white nationalism or ideologically driven racism in the ranks. These numbers have recently jumped. In 2018, only 22% reported the same. And now it's more than 1/3, okay? So more than 33%. It's been this way for several, seriously, use the same. Don't go comparing apples and oranges here. It's been this way for several decades now. I don't want to give the impression that there is some huge influx of extremists in the military, or the military is rife with extremists. That's not the nature of the problem, Mark Pitcavage, a senior research fellow at the Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism, told Vice News. There are a small number of extremists in the military relative to its size, but the thing is, there's no minimum number of extremists under which there are no problems. Pitcavage said that extremism in the military surges at the same time it surges in the general population. So it's just a sample group is going to be equal to the larger majority. That's what he's saying. That leads to a cycle where the Pentagon reacts to the problem, passes regulation, and then relents on the problem as the problem dies off. It's something that has to be addressed, and it hasn't been well addressed by the military so far. Military so far, blah, 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 blah. This is why it's important that the military address this as a long-term issue and come to grips with what it will need to do to deal with this, not on an ad hoc basis, but on an institutional basis. And it can be done. It's doable. And Pitcavage, they spelled his name different up there. Screw this whole thing then. He also shared alarming statistics of the 427 people killed by extremists in America between 2009 and 2018. A lot of issues in this article. 73% were killed by right-wing extremists, 76% of them by white supremacists, making white supremacists the deadliest type of extremist movement in the United States in those 10 years by far. And I think at one point I read something that was comparing that to to Antifa and BLM, and I think it was something like 6 in the same amount of time, or something like that, something insane like that. So yeah, wonderful. Pitcavige's testimony included many details about specific incidents of white supremacist extremism in the military. It's a long list. In 2019, he told Congress an allegedly white supremacist soldier stationed at Fort Wiley was charged with distributing information about manufacturing weapons of mass destruction. His stated aim was to kill journalists and Antifa members. All this talking always leads to me getting hiccups. In 2017, a former National Guardsman and founding member of the neo-Nazi group Anton-Waffen Division was arrested after officers found explosives in his apartment following the death of his roommates. That's horrifying. In 2018, an AWOL soldier and a former army specialist allegedly killed 2 people during a gun deal. Their plan was to fly to Ukraine and join a right-wing militia to fight in Donetsk. Also in 2018, the Marines court-martialed Lance Corporal Vasilius Pistolis after he was filmed at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. In 2017, an Army Reserve major used a pistol to threaten people at a local mosque and was sentenced to 8 months of home arrest. While these are just incidents that involve violence, Pitcavige's testimony also contained numerous examples of ongoing investigations and stories of soldiers, Marines, and airmen and sailors who were caught distributing white supremacist literature, posting on white supremacist message boards, and rallying with white supremacists in public. According to Pitcavige, most extremists join the military not to seek training for violent insurrection against the government, but for the same reasons other people join. They come from a military family with a history of service or need a good job. It's also a place where people are exposed to extremist ideas and become radicalized. That's horrifying. The military is insular, and the bonds service members form with their fellows are unique and strong. Service members tend to be young and receptive to new ideas. It's the perfect time. I feel like there's still a lot more of this article, and you can read more of this article if you wish. There was literally a lot more of that. That was like a third what we've read so far. But I think the point I'm trying to get at here is that the military is scary. And we should be careful about trusting them because a bunch of them are apparently racists and white supremacists and all kinds of other scary words. Moving on from there, cop allegedly raped teen girl after driving her to the ER for a rape kit. So remember, don't trust your military, don't trust your cops, don't trust the people in your own house, don't trust anyone. They're all trying to kill you. This is a story on Vice.com by Emma Ackerman on February 26, 2021. Rodney Vicknair first met the underage girl he'd allegedly gone on to groom and sexually assault when he was an officer with the New Orleans Police Department. Trigger warning for people who get triggered by that sort of thing. I probably should have said that first. He escorted her to a children's hospital for a rape kit. Vicknair waited for the 14-year-old rape survivor in the emergency room, allegedly showing her modeling pictures on his phone of a teenage girl who claimed to be his daughter posing in bikinis. And was it not his daughter? Because that's horrifying. According to a lawsuit filed this week by the girl's mother, the police department veteran who had prior complaints against him, according to the lawsuit, wasn't even part of a unit for special victims or victims of child abuse. When the teen was released from the hospital, he wasn't even a cop now. He apparently was a cop. When the teen was released from the hospital, Vicknair allegedly spent the next 4 months gaining her trust, sexually harassing her, and eventually sexually abusing her. On 2 occasions, he raped the girl by inserting his fingers into her vagina while they were in his police. Sorry, that was gross to hear. According to the lawsuit. He preyed on a single mother and her young daughter, a rape survivor, by positioning himself as a role model and protective male figure in their lives. Hope Phelps, an attorney with Most and Associates, and one of the lawyers who filed the lawsuit, said in a statement to Vice News. He then used that position to create distrust between them, isolating his target from her mother. He escalated from sexualizing the young girl to sexual assault and rape. The second alleged rape occurred after the police and an independent oversight agency had been alerted of his inappropriate conduct. Jesus Christ. Both times, he was allegedly armed with a service weapon, according to the lawsuit. In Louisiana, what Vicknair is accused of, penetrating the girl with his fingers, doesn't fall under the legal definition of rape. I'm sorry, what? Which the state has limited to non-consensual sexual intercourse, according to the lawsuit. But attorneys wrote, this archaic definition does not reflect rape as a crime against bodily integrity. It reflects a culture that blames survivors for the crimes that are committed against them and finds any excuse to be lenient with rapists. The lawsuit names Vicknair, New Orleans police superintendent, and the city itself as defendants. The city of New Orleans, the police department, and Vicknair did not immediately respond to Vice News' requests for comment. It wasn't immediately clear whether Vicknair had an attorney present with him in the lawsuit. An attorney for his pending criminal case declined to comment. When he was arrested in September of last year, Vicknair was allegedly still in possession of the girl's underwear. How do you explain that one off? According to the lawsuit, he was fired from the police department last month, and the agency has contacted the FBI about potential civil rights violations, according to Fox 8 in New Orleans. The disturbing 36-page lawsuit against Vicknair in the city of New Orleans was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Louisiana on Wednesday. It also alleges violations of the girl's civil rights. The complaint notes that sexual misconduct by police officers typically goes unreported and often targets minor girls, citing a 2014 Bowling Green State University study. That's horrible. The New Orleans Police Department has a policy that directs its child abuse unit to investigate all sexually related incidents involving victims under the age of 17, according to the lawsuit. Dispatchers are also supposed to send trained detectives specializing in child abuse or sex crimes. A department manual notes that victims of child abuse might bond with the first officer they interact with. Vicknair was not a member of any special unit for victims, according to the lawsuit. What's more, he'd been accused of inappropriate behavior before. Because of that, attorneys described him as a singularly bad choice for transporting the girl to a rape kit examination. In 2009, a woman filed a complaint with the department's Public Integrity Bureau because he'd allegedly used her license plate number to obtain her personal information and called out her name once in a grocery store parking lot, according to the lawsuit. A department investigation found he'd acted inappropriately and he was suspended for 5 days. Gross. In 2016, Vicknair allegedly threatened a homeless woman while he was responding to her boyfriend's fatal heroin overdose, saying, I bet if I checked your name, you would have warrants. Other officers on the scene were also accused of laughing and joking during the incident. The dead man's mother filed a complaint, and Vicknair received a letter of reprimand. Good job. After he met the 14-year-old rape victim in May of last year, he contacted the girl's family almost every day, from June until September, according to the lawsuit, and frequently invited himself over to their home after presenting himself as a mentor. He would allegedly encourage the girl to roughhouse with him, at one point giving the teen his police baton, suggesting she hit him with it. He then allegedly struck her on the arm with the baton. At least once, he allegedly twisted her arm and told her he could easily break it. He also joked about how he could kill her loved ones, according to the lawsuit. Well, that's funny. The lawsuit alleges that Vicknair would park his car along routes the girl would travel, and once leaned out of his vehicle to shout, "Nice ass." He allegedly described sexual acts that he wanted to do with the girl, asked her to wear lacy thongs and loose-fitting clothing, groped her on multiple occasions, and told her that he allowed his 16-year-old daughter to have sex with older men. What? Did he think that would engender her to him? I'm very confused. He allegedly exposed his penis to her at least twice over FaceTime, but not in person, so there's that. He also displayed sexually suggestive photos of her as his lock screen on his smartphone. Once, after allegedly sexually assaulting the girl, he followed her into her home and asked her mother to take a photo of him and the teen together. Oh, what the fuck? What the fuck? It took great courage for our client and her daughter to report this crime, Phelps said in a statement. Investigation and trial are often re traumatizing experiences for rape survivors. In this case, our client and her daughter are shouldering a great burden to make sure Officer Vic Nair and the system that made his actions possible are held to account. Several police officers over the past few years have been publicly accused of sexually assaulting young women and girls. Two former detectives with the New York Police Department were accused of raping an 18-year-old woman in their custody in 2017. The ex-officers, who said the incident was consensual, later, because then that would be totally okay to be on the job having sex with someone. Anyway. They later pleaded guilty to official misconduct and receiving a bribe. Jesus. In 2019, a Portsmouth, Virginia police officer allegedly raped a 17-year-old girl after he threatened her with a traffic citation. Last year, a police officer in Flint, Michigan was arrested after he was accused of sexually abusing a young girl. She doesn't even have clean water, man. What the fuck? Moving on from there, dog napping is surprisingly common, but what happened to Lady Gaga is unheard of. Sorry about that last article being really intense. And sorry, I just kind of was just like, we're moving on. That's rough and gross, and police suck, and everyone sucks, and the world sucks. New life lesson for you. This is a story on February 26, 2021, and it's just as serious because Lady Gaga's dogs were dog napped. On a quiet street in Hollywood on Wednesday night, two thieves shot Lady Gaga's dog walker. That's fucked. And stole two of the pop star's three French bulldogs. At least they left one. They didn't want to leave her with none. She'd be lonely. Why is my nose so itchy all the time? Where was I? Besides raising the volume, I think a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. RESPECT. The dog walker, Ryan Fisher, is currently in critical condition at an area hospital, according to CNN. Lady Gaga has since offered up a $500,000 reward for the return of her dogs, no questions asked. But as of now, they're still missing. Actually, I believe they were found. I have heard that someone brought them back, but it wasn't the person who took them. It was a third party, and I don't know if they got the money reward. Dog napping is surprisingly common in the U.S. Horrifying. According to Tom Sharp, the president and CEO of AKC Reunite, the American Kennel Club's lost pet recovery service, thousands of dogs are stolen every year, but never in his life has he heard of a dog being stolen at gunpoint. Sharp said that dog napping is almost always a crime of opportunity. Dogs are typically stolen from yards, animal shelters, or pet stores, mostly in the spur of the moment. The fact that someone stole Gaga's dogs while they were being walked is extraordinary, he said. Judging from surveillance footage from the incident, it's hard not to wonder if the heist was premeditated. The footage, obtained by Fox 11 Los Angeles, shows two assailants in a sedan pull up to Fisher, shoot him, snatch two of the dogs, and speed away. That's fucked. That's fucked. There's a chance they didn't know the dogs belonged to Lady Gaga, Sharp said, and instead targeted them because the Frenchies are an expensive breed that can sometimes be resold for thousands of dollars. But it's also possible they knew exactly whose pets they were after. The search for the suspects is ongoing. The police haven't released many details about the crime. Again, they found, apparently they found the dogs. So yeah, you can read more about that. They interview people and stuff, and you can look up more information probably on Vice, but elsewhere. I don't think I have any more here, but you know where to go. Moving on from there, Pokemon Legends Arceus Pokeballs are steam powered and made of wood. This is a very important news about Pokemon. Okay, so you're gonna strap in and you're gonna listen to this news about Pokemon. I'm so glad there was something between this and the rape story, is all I'm saying. The Pokemon trainers from Ancient Sinnoh, was this at the beginning? Yes. The Pokemon trainers of Ancient Sinnoh had to catch Pokemon using less sophisticated materials than the ones in modern day. This is a very important lore. As Pokemon Legends, Arceus' Pokeballs are wooden and powered by steam, and that's what they look like. Fancy. It's like a Pokeball, but with a zipper. What else? should I say about this? So, what is Pokemon Legends Arceus? You might be asking because it's doing a good job of explaining that. It is a game they announced alongside. Maybe they're gonna describe it lower down. The recent Pokemon Presents Showcase announced several games that will be set in the Sinnoh region, including full-fledged remakes of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Pokemon series veterans can return to Sinnoh region that they remembered in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, faithful remakes of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl from the original Nintendo DS. The biggest surprise of the event was Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is an upcoming open-world RPG that emulates the style of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Pokemon Legends Arceus is set in the ancient version of the Sinnoh region, where most of the landscape is still untamed, and wild Pokemon freely roam the countryside. The official website for Pokemon Legends is now live and has revealed something that was glossed over during the presentation. Pokemon Legends is set a long time before the events of the other Pokemon games, which means that the technology shouldn't be as advanced as it would be in the Pokemon Sword and Shield era. The website features artwork of the Pokeballs used during the era of Pokemon Legends, and they're a little more basic than what modern trainers are accustomed to. These antique Pokeballs are made of wood and powered by steam, which puffs out of the top of the item. Oh, that's what that's for? Pop, 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 pop. When a Pokemon is caught. That's cute. The design is so retro that they even have what resembles a pull tab on the front rather than the series' iconic white button. I see that. The Pokeballs of old were apparently built a little differently from the ones we know so well. It's the caption to that thing, and I shouldn't have read that. Blah, 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 blah. Single type Pokeball, but there could be other types. Blah, 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 blah. This was a story on Screen Rant by Scott Baird, by the way, and it was published 7 days ago, whatever that means. Moving on from there. They started burning the homes. Ethiopians say their towns are being razed in an ethnic cleansing campaign. Just as important as a Pokemon story, if not more important. And that wasn't sarcasm. It actually is much more important. I'm sorry. Very serious. They started burning the homes. Ethiopians say their towns are being razed in ethnic cleansing campaign. Says Zacharias Zalalim on February 27, 2021 on Vice.com. They set our crops on fire. Then they started burning the homes, said Gebru Habdham, a farmer in his 40s from the village of Debre Harmaz in Ethiopia. Then they said they'd burn me next, so I fled for my life. Horrifying. Gebru, whose name has been changed to protect him from reprisals, was born and raised in the village of Debre Harmaz in central Tigray, some 5 miles from Ethiopia's border with Eritrea. Like thousands of others, he has been displaced by Ethiopia's months-long civil war. Gebru connected with Vice World News from an undisclosed location along the Ethiopian-Sudanese border and said there was no sign of war or even resistance fighters present when, on January 10th, Eritrean soldiers arrived in his village and went on a murderous rampage, pillaging and setting homes on alight. They shot at everyone. They even killed priests who were hiding in the church, he said. Gebru also said he'd heard about neighboring villages experiencing similar destructions that had also gone unreported. Over the past month, Vice World News has documented harrowing testimonies from 9 displaced Tigrayans who recalled wanton slaughter, the destruction of crops and livelihoods, and tens of thousands fleeing from the areas of Ethiopia's Tigray region under Eritrean military control. Their testimony has been largely confirmed by satellite image analysis by the UK-based research organization DX Open Network, and their recounting and the image analysis both suggest that Eritrean soldiers involved in Ethiopia's war in Tigray are ethnically cleansing communities near the Ethiopian-Eritrean border. While several towns in the area have been previously reported destroyed, Vice World News found that at minimum, an additional 4 villages in Tigray have likely been razed and their inhabitants killed. Eritrean soldiers first entered Ethiopian civil war to fight alongside the Ethiopian army against forces of Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, known as the TPLF, or the governing party in the region. In November, soldiers from the 2 countries succeeded in jointly pushing out Tigrayan forces from the regional capital, Mekelle, and have been accused by international organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch of brutal war crimes and indiscriminate shelling the targeted civilians, and is believed to have left thousands dead. How often do you hear of these places, and yet all this shit's going on? Residents say that though Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed declared victory and the end of combat operations, Eritrean military units have continued attacking civilian areas, looting and killing before setting properties ablaze to render entire areas uninhabitable. Now Ethiopia claims it is conducting cleanup operations across parts of rural Tigray. Satellite images from central Tigray's Eritrean border, however, points to something far more nefarious. Like Debre Harmaz, the remote farming community of Adi Mendi, located 3 miles from Ethiopia's border, also appears to have been destroyed. According to analysis by the DX Open Network, satellite imagery revealed that on January 19th, some 478 structures, mostly tukul homes made from compressed straw, grass, and mud, were set on fire. That's 478. Tukul homes are common in farming communities across Ethiopia, and they even show, like, look, here's all the homes that were set on fire. We've marked every single one on a map. Crazy. All in that region. Just setting it all on fire. And those are the burnt out husks of homes. Many of them were burnt alive in their homes, said Adamu Gide. So they weren't even among people who escaped. A lot of them were still in the homes when they were set on fire. Said Adamu Gide, who hails from the nearby town of Rama and is well acquainted with the border areas. Hot flash. I'm having a hot flash. Not good. I've met with survivors who told me that the Adi Mendi is now a ghost town. Farmers were forced by Eritrean soldiers to slaughter their cows and prepare food for the soldiers. They later doused the homes of these same farmers in gasoline. Adi Mendi no longer exists. The satellite images of the visible scorched aftermath point to possibly thousands of people being rendered homeless or far worse. The people of Adi Mendi were farmers who would go once a month on hours-long treks to nearby areas to sell their produce, as there are no paved roads for vehicles, said Guidi, whose name has been changed to protect his safety. They didn't deserve this cruelty. The DX Open Network's analysis also confirmed that in recent weeks the racing has begun to expand beyond central Tigray. The village of Adamati, located just south of the long-contested town of Badme, and flashpoint of the 1998-2000 Ethiopian-Eritrean border war, was similarly ransacked, and homes set on fire as recently as February 16th. DX Open Network shared satellite imagery of Edameti ruins with Vice World News. Well, good for them. That might be what we were looking at up here. While much of the war was fought under communications blackout, its phone and internet services were severed from the entire area, and aid workers and journalists were not allowed to enter the region. Multiple reports this past week have echoed similar findings of ethnic cleansing and indiscriminate destruction. It's horrible. Yesterday, the New York Times published portions of the U.S. government report which stated that ethnic cleansing was rampant in northern Tigray. According to the report, whole villages were severely damaged or completely erased. According to an Amnesty International report also published on Friday, Eritrean soldiers killed hundreds of civilians in the Tigrayan city of Aksum from November 28th through November 29th, in one of the worst atrocities of the war. Going door to door in the city's residential areas, soldiers singled out males of fighting age and murdered them in their homes, the report stated. Ethiopian soldiers are also accused of involvement in mass killings and are believed to have played a role in the systematic razing of 2 UNHCR-run refugee camps. For months, Ethiopia and Eritrea had denied reports that Eritrean soldiers were involved in Ethiopia's civil war, but footage uploaded to the internet and credible reports of their involvement in atrocities led to U.S. officials calling on Eritrea to withdraw its forces. Refugees told Vice World News that they believe that Eritrea's territorial control in Ethiopia likely extended beyond Tigray's Mekelle district. The UN has echoed these concerns. Chief Coordinator of Humanitarian Efforts, Mark Lowcock, recently stated his belief that Ethiopian troops only control between 60% to 80% of Tigray, and that Eritrean soldiers operating in the area control much of the remaining areas, pursuing their own objectives independent of Ethiopian command. What the fuck? In February, on a panel organized by German news outlet Deutsche Welle, Ethiopia's foreign ministry spokesperson Dina Mufti conceded that Eritrean soldiers might have crossed into porous border areas to contain lawlessness. But refugees from the same border areas refute this. They aren't just crossing the border, they are in control of the entire area, says Gourmet, who requested he be referred to only by his first name to protect his safety. Gourmet fled his family's farm located in a village in the Mekelle district. Border areas in the Mekelle district's border areas after getting word that Eritrean soldiers were advancing on it. Since the war started, we haven't seen a single Ethiopian soldier, only Eritreans, he told Vice World News. They occupied the rural areas. According to Germain and 4 others who fled the region, the Eritrean state-run telecommunications provider Erytel's network reach was expanded to Mekele, meaning that, unlike inhabitants of other parts of Tigray, left in the dark by the Ethiopian government's communications shutdown, residents of Mekele district have been unable to maintain their phone service using Eritrean SIM cards. Eritrean soldiers started to sell them, they said, after realizing the high demand. Horrible. It's as if we're no longer part of Ethiopia, he explained. People calling you with numbers that have the +291 instead of the +251 area code. Eritrean soldiers in control of the area, but at least using the Eritrean numbers, we can warn our friends when there's danger. The sudden expansion of Eritrea's cellular network into parts of Eritrean-occupied Ethiopia is worrying, said Gourmet. But he also believed it helped save lives, including his own. Gourmet says the tiny and mountainous Ethiopian village of Adi Fatah, located 2 miles from the Eritrean border, was attacked twice by Eritrean raiding parties, first in mid-December and later on January 11th. He told Vice World News that he fled his own home, located in a nearby village, after being warned over the phone of the second attack. How did I just lose? I lost where I was. Second attack. I lost where I was. I wasn't that far. Do 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 do. Dee 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 dee. I was farther than that. After Vice World News asked researchers from DX Open Network about this purported attack on Adi Fatah, the organization's researchers obtained satellite imagery from the town, which they analyzed and found that approximately a dozen homes in the village were destroyed in fire-based attacks that occurred prior to January 5th. Like the many similar attacks on rural communities, there are no apparent indicators of militarily valid targets in Adi Fatah, and there are clear indicators of the deliberate burnings of homes there, DX Open Network said. Beater Gabrislassy, I totally knocked that one out of the park, hails from May Weddenbury, another village near Adi Fatah, and currently lives in Melbourne, Australia. Since the Eritrean phone reception started working, I've learned that Eritrean soldiers burned my aunt's home down, he told Vice World News. My aunt and her neighbors were lucky to escape alive. They spent weeks sleeping under trees with almost no food. Horrible. His family, he said, also told of other similar stories in the region. I know of a family of parents and 2 children who were burnt alive in their home, added Gabriel Selassie. They enter a home, take what they like, and then burn it down. They are using camels to cart off stolen possessions. Beecher and Gourmet both said that the extent of Mekele district's destroyed infrastructure and deaths is unknown, but share the names of at least a dozen separate villages which they say were razed to the ground by the Eritrean military in a manner similar to what happened in Adi Mendi. The Adi Mengedi, Adi Berbi, and Halfdom villages were all attacked. We've also learned of at least 25 deaths on January 1st at Bihiza, Germay said. They burnt homes and took all the cattle, camels, and food as loot. Neither the Ethiopian Prime Minister's press secretary, Beline Seyum, nor Eritrean Minister of Information, Yemain Gebremeskel, responded to emails sent by Vice World News seeking comment on the findings. Both governments typically rebuff such allegations, with Yemain Gebremeskel only yesterday labeling Amnesty International's report alleging Eritrean military involvement in the Axum massacre as fallacious. Most of the survivors reached by Vice World News are suffering from trauma and shock, and don't know if they will have a home to return to once the war is over. I think they want to kill us all, said Samuel, whose name has been changed and who says he witnessed soldiers shooting dead his parents, 3 of his neighbors, and a young child. I don't think it would be safe to return, even if things became peaceful. They'd want to finish what they started. The situation looks increasingly grim. The Ethiopian and Eritrean governments refuse to acknowledge abuses by their forces, and preventative measures don't appear forthcoming. International pressure is also limited. While other governments have made statements condemning nearby attacks, very little has changed. Harut Zareh, one of over 50,000 Ethiopians to flee in Sudan, agreed. Sudan is my country now, she told Vice World News. I am safe here, and the people are helping us with what little they have. But in Ethiopia, we are treated worse than animals. Horrifying. And by the way, Ethiopia. Let's take a look at where it is on the map in case you didn't know. Seems like a good idea. There it is. There's Sudan, there's Eritrea right there. So they're coming down into Ethiopia and messing things up. Somalia, Kenya, Uganda, Djibouti, South Sudan. So yeah, that area there is a fucked up. Excuse me. Big yawn. I didn't sleep last night, by the way. I tried to sleep. I ended up not sleeping. I was up too late, and then I decided to record this instead of lying in bed and doing nothing. I copied the same thing twice, right? Moving on from there. Where are we at here? We're nearing the end, and by nearing the end, I mean we still have like 7 more to go. We got this. I got this. At Conservative Conference, Trump is still the golden boy. This is a story by Chill Colvin of the Associated Press on February 26, 2021. And it is out of Washington, D.C. A conference dedicated to the future of the conservative movement turned into an ode for Donald Trump on Friday as speakers declared their fealty to the former president and attendees posed for selfies with a golden statue of his likeness. I've seen it. It's gross. As the Republican Party grapples with deep divisions over the extent to which they should embrace Trump after losing the White House and both chambers of Congress, those gathered at the annual Conservative Political Action Conference made clear they are not ready to move on from the former president, or from his base's charges that the November election was rigged against him. Donald J. Trump ain't going anywhere, said Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He said a lot of other insane things. That's not funny, is what Corden put on his soundboard. One of several potential 2024 presidential contenders who spoke at the event being held this year in Orlando to bypass COVID-19 restrictions. Trump on Sunday will be making his first post-presidential appearance at the conference, and aides say he will use the speech to reassert his power. The program underscored the split raging within the GOP, as many establishment voices argue the party must move on from Trump to win back the suburban voters who abandoned them in November, putting President Joe Biden in the White House. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell and others worry Trump will undermine the party's political future if he and his conspiracy theories continue to dominate Republican politics. And yet they have the power to do stuff about it, and they refuse to. But at the conference, speakers continued to fan disinformation and conspiracy theories about the 2020 elections, with panels dedicated to amplifying false claims of mass voter fraud that have been dismissed by the courts, state election officials, and Trump's own administration. Indeed, Senator Josh Hawley, Republican representative of, I don't know, M.O.? M.O. I'm assuming it's a state. Missouri. It is Missouri. I'm Canadian, so don't make fun of me. And Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, another potential 2024 hopeful, drew among the loudest applause and a standing ovation when he bragged about challenging the election certification on January 6th, despite the storming of the Capitol building by Trump supporters trying to halt the process. I thought it was an important stand to take, he said. Others argued the party would lose if it turned its back on Trump and alienate the working class voters drawn to his populist message. We cannot, we will not, go back to the days of the failed Republican establishment of yesteryear, said Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who outlined a new Trumpian GOP agenda focused on restrictive immigration policies, opposition to China, and limiting military. I mean, it's not necessarily bad to limit military engagement. We will not win the future by trying to go back to where the Republican Party used to be, echoed Florida Senator Rick Scott, who chairs the fundraising committee tasked with electing Republicans to the Senate. If we do, we will lose the working base that President Trump is so animated. We're going to lose elections across the country, and ultimately we're going to lose our nation. Scott is dismissing pressure on him to mediate between warring factions on the right or mediate the war of words between the party leaders. He has refused to take sides in the bitter ongoing fight between Trump and McConnell, who blamed Trump for inciting the deadly Capitol riot, but ultimately voted to acquit him at his impeachment trial earlier this month. I'm not going to mediate anything, he said, criticizing those who prefer to fan the flames of a civil war on our side as foolish and ridiculous. But in speeches throughout the day, the GOP turmoil was front and center. Trump's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., lit it into Republican Representative Liz Cheney, the number 3 House Republican who has faced tremendous backlash for her vote to impeach Trump for inciting the Capitol riot. As the program was wrapping up, Trump issued a statement endorsing Max Miller, a former staffer who has now launched a campaign challenging Ohio Representative Anthony Gonzalez, another Republican who voted in favor of impeachment. Kimberly Guilfoyle, a former Fox News Channel host and Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend, offered a pointed message to those who stand in opposition to the former president, who will not arrive at the conference until Sunday, but was present in spirit in the form of a large golden statue erected in a merchandise show booth, where attendees could pose for pictures. We bid a farewell to the weak-kneed, the spineless, and the cowards that are posing in D.C. pretending that they're working for the people, she said. Let's send them a pink slip straight from the CPAC. Trump Jr., who labeled the conference TPAC in honor of his father, hyped the return of his father and the Make America Great Again platform to the spotlight. I imagine it will not be what we call low-energy speech, he said, and I assure you that will solidify Donald Trump and all of your feelings about the MAGA movement as the future of the Republican Party. And I hope people aren't fooled by their bullshit. Next, Republicans test history and vote against pandemic relief. This is a story by Steve Peoples of the Associated Press on February 27th, 2021. That's how you do a date. New York. Out of New York. With the nation's financial system on the brink of collapse, all but 3 Republicans voted against a massive stimulus package designed to protect millions of Americans from financial ruin. It was early 2009, just weeks after Joe Biden was sworn in as vice president, and the vote marked the beginning of a new era of partisan gridlock in Congress. Excuse me. And for the beleaguered Republicans coming off a disastrous election, it was their first step back to political power. Democrats voted alone to stabilize the economy, and 2 years later, the Republican Party, unified only by its unwavering opposition to Barack Obama's presidency, seized the House majority. Now, just weeks into the Biden presidency, the GOP is gambling that history will repeat itself. Early Saturday morning, 210 House Republicans joined 2 Democrats in voting against a $1.9 trillion pandemic relief package that would send 1,400 checks to most Americans and hundreds of billions more to help open schools, revive struggling businesses, and provide financial support to state and local governments. Senate Republicans are expected to oppose a similar measure in the coming weeks, arguing that the bill is not focused enough on the pandemic. But with near unanimous Democratic support, the measure could still become law. It's far too soon to predict the political fallout from the first major legislative fight of the Biden era, but as the nation struggles to recover from the worst health and financial crisis in generations, strategists in both parties agree that it's risky for Republicans to assume their 2009 playbook will lead to the same ballot box success this time around. I think that the Republicans misread here. I think what the Republicans misread here is that it is the same, or that they can just oppose it and there's no ramifications, the Biden's campaign chief pollster said. It's a different world. Veteran Republican pollster Frank Lunt said Republicans now bear the burden of clearly articulating their opposition, a task made more difficult by the distraction of former President Donald Trump's high-profile war against the Republican establishment. The definer of the legislation wins this battle, Lunt said. This could end up being the most important vote of 2021. There are reasons to believe that politics have changed since Republicans last unified against the sweeping stimulus package, not the least of which is Trump's omnipresence in the party. At the same time, the scale of the economic devastation and disruption wrought by the coronavirus pandemic dwarfs that of the 2008 financial crisis. At its peak, roughly $9 9 million US jobs were lost in the Great Recession, compared with 22 million jobs lost to the coronavirus. A year after the pandemic began, nearly 10 million US jobs remain lost. More than 20 million children are out of school, half a million Americans are dead, and roughly 100,000 businesses are feared closed forever. Polling suggests that an overwhelming majority of voters, including a significant number of Republicans, supports Democrats' pandemic relief plan. And the business community, along with state and local leaders in both parties, are trying out for help. On the eve of the House vote, Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt joined 31 other Republican mayors in a letter encouraging leaders in both parties to approve the package. The major part of the bill that relates to cities is sorely needed, Holt told the Associated Press, citing pandemic-related cuts to his city's police and fire departments. I don't know any blue or red state or blue or red city that doesn't have a revenue shortfall due to COVID-19 fallout. In another deep red state, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice also broke the with Washington Republicans and said Congress should go big or go home on the new stimulus package. We have tried to underspend and undersize what was really needed to go over the top of the mountain, the Republican governor told reporters during a Friday coronavirus briefing. You got a lot of people across this nation who are really hurting, and that's what happens every time you vote conservative. Yet no Republican in Washington voted to support the sweeping $1.9 trillion stimulus package early Saturday. Moderate Democratic representatives Jared Golden, Maine, and Kurt Schrader of Oregon were the only two lawmakers to cross party lines, joining 210 Republicans to vote against the legislation that ultimately passed 219 to 212. The swamp is back, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said shortly before the final vote, decrying what he called extraordinary non-COVID waste and a blue state bailout. Most states are not in financial distress, McCarthy said. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, traditionally a Republican ally, declined to support or oppose the Republican position. Neil Bradley, the Chamber's executive vice president and chief policy officer, said there is a need for a rescue package that is targeted, timely, and temporary. There's a lot to like in the plan, Bradley told the AP. There's also a lot of elements that fail the test of targeted, timely, and temporary. The Chamber, like congressional Republicans, opposes Democratic efforts to boost federal minimum wage to $15 hourly by 2025 from its current $7.25 floor. The Senate parliamentarian ruled Thursday that the progressive priority could not be included in the Senate version of the bill, although Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is considering a provision that would penalize large companies that don't pay workers at least $15 an hour. So basically, because I think a lot of people are wondering, like, they have a majority, why can't they just push this through? Sometimes with some things they need a 60% majority, and they have a 51% majority if it goes straight across party lines. So I mean, Republicans easily could have voted for this, voted to raise minimum wage, but they literally just hate people and love to see normal citizens suffer. Conservatives in Canada do the same thing. It's horrible, it's disgusting, it's monstrous, and I can't imagine how so many people vote for these guys. Whether the minimum wage provision is included or not, Senate Republicans are expected to oppose the final package. Fill an itchy nose. While there could be political fallout from the GOP strategy in next year's midterm elections, Republican officials privately concede they are more concerned about the intense intra-party feud pitting Trump and his loyalists against leading establishment Republicans such as Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and the number 3 House Republican Representative Liz Cheney of Wyoming. God, I hope that they lose more seats. God, I hope. They need it. That divide is playing out this weekend at the Conservative Political Action Conference in Orlando, Florida, where Trump himself is expected to attack his party's establishment on Sunday as he returns to the public stage for the first time since leaving the White House. Arkansas's Senator Tom Cotton, another CPAC speaker and a 2024 Republican presidential prospect, said party unity is paramount moving forward. I think that Republicans need to recognize that what brings us together right now is the left-wing agenda of the Biden-Harris administration, Cotton told the AP. The more that we focus on what they're trying to accomplish in the Congress and through the president's executive actions, the more united we will be, and the more we will move public opinion in our direction. Americans for Prosperity, a conservative political powerhouse, opposes the Democratic package as well, but its president,
Tim Phillips, says it's unclear whether the GOP strategy will be enough to unite the deeply fractured Republican Party. This feels a lot like 2009, that United Republican caucus and the activist base in a way that probably nothing else could have, Phillips said. It served them well in 2009. I wonder if it'll serve them well this time. Next story. This is a story on ScreenRant.com. Emma Watson retiring from acting rumors debunked by her manager. There was a bunch of rumors going around that Emma Watson was retiring from acting, but apparently that's not true. So now you know. And that was a story on ScreenRant.com. Moving on from there, Republicans went full QAnon at CPAC. But tell me more. This is a story on Vice.com by David Gilbert on March 1st, 2021. Over the past few weeks, the GOP has been accused of embracing its extremist fringes, amplifying disinformation campaigns, and encouraging the QAnon conspiracy that believes Donald Trump is waging war on a secret global pedophile ring. Many have been quick to reject these accusations. QAnon is not part of the Republican Party, Representative Jim Banks from Indiana said on Saturday while attending the Conservative Political Action Conference that took place over the weekend, but maybe he should have been paying more attention to what was happening around him. Why? Is Manuel Sorchi. Over the course of the three-day conference in Orlando, Florida, multiple QAnon-supporting lawmakers and conservative personalities spoke. One actively promoted the conspiracy theory directly from the stage, and the presence of the former president was enough to send conspiracy message boards into a frenzy. Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert spoke to the crowd. Colorado Representative Lauren Boebert spoke to the crowd at CPAC and has previously said she hopes Q is real. Ugh. So did Representative Burgess Owens from Utah, who fundraised on a QAnon show last May. And MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, who is currently facing a $1.2 billion lawsuit for spreading election conspiracy theories that emerged from the QAnon fever swamp, was also there. Angela Stanton King, a former congressional candidate who has long boosted the QAnon conspiracy, spoke at CPAC on Sunday and openly called for the authorities to investigate baseless allegations that Democrats are running a cannibalistic pedophile ring. Let's address it, King told the audience. So we know that in this election there were some things going on in regards to conspiracy theories with Q, right? And I think, me as a person, before I ever got into this conservative movement, I've always been an advocate, even if it's for abused children, or it's for those people that are incarcerated. So I think that any allegation coming forward in regards to any type of abuse when it comes to children deserves to be investigated. It deserves to be made aware of. Her comments were met with cheers from the audience, especially when she said that the mainstream media had tried to cancel her for addressing allegations of child abuse. Stanton King's speech is just the latest example of the mainstreaming of extremist conspiracies. Where was I now? I'm so tired. Within the QAnon conspiracy theories, Trump is seen as a savior who is secretly waging war against the deep state, who are working to protect the Democrats and Hollywood elite, who they claim are running a satanic, cannibalistic child sex trafficking ring. Did I mention I was up all night? Trump repeatedly refused to disavow QAnon ahead of November's election, instead praised them as people who like me very much. Trump's election loss and his subsequent ban from mainstream social media platforms have left a gaping hole in the conspiracy movement, where his every utterance was dissected and interpreted to find hidden meanings that would be fitted into the QAnon mythos, even when they contradicted previous claims. So Sunday's speech, Trump's first since President Joe Biden was inaugurated, was highly anticipated by QAnon believers, and their idol didn't disappoint. Trump's live-filled 90-minute address hit on some of his and QAnon's favorite topics, including widely debunked claims about election fraud, misinformation about the vaccine rollout, and Biden's actions since taking office. As usual, Trump's speech didn't contain any overt references to QAnon, but at a live stream immediately after Trump left the stage, QAnon influencer Jordan Sather said the speech was loaded with double meaning and messages that he believed were directed at the QAnon community. It was clear, he added. Trump's CPAC appearance was also received enthusiastically by members of the QAnon-linked groups online. Some QAnon supporters highlighted specific aspects of the speech in order to make it fit with previous conspiracies. One poster on the Great Awakenings, a QAnon-focused message board, highlighted that flags flanking the CPAC stage while Trump was speaking were topped with golden eagles. The poster claimed that these emblems were used for the use of the President of the United States only, and only in the time of war. Of course, this is not true, but it helps perpetuate the myth that Trump is still the legitimate President of the United States, who continues to have the backing of the military. Another user on Great Awakenings flagged an old message from QAnon's anonymous leader, known only as Q, who posted on July 2019 a photo of a wristwatch displaying the time 4:49, which coincided with the delayed start of Trump's speech on Sunday. Some within QAnon predict that Trump may return to the White House as soon as this Thursday, March 4th, although major figures within the movement are trying to dissuade people from promoting this theory. But after Sunday's speech, during which Trump laid out aspects of the election process he sees as broken, supporters immediately used this as evidence that the former president was going to somehow rerun last year's vote and conduct something called a military election. I know what he's doing, one Great Awakenings member posted. He just announced his candidacy for president of the 2021 military election. People are so dumb, and they think they're so smart. Others enthusiastically agreed, with one adding, "Yeah, I've long thought we'd see a rerun of the election with oversight from the military. My prediction record is not impeccable, but his speech truly seemed to confirm that path, that part of the plan." God, these people are so dumb. It's unimaginable. A lot of things are unimaginable on this show. 3 stories left. No, Antifa was not behind the Capitol riot, FBI tells GOP. This is another story on Vice.com by Tess Owen on March 3rd, 2021, or either March 2nd or February 3rd. Who knows, because they write their dates weird on Vice. This is a story by Tess Owens. The FBI has arrested hundreds of right-wing extremists for their roles in the deadly insurrection at the Capitol, but the GOP only wants to talk about the one group that had no role at all, Antifa. Testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, FBI Director Christopher Wray was repeatedly forced to shut down the baseless conspiracy theory that Antifa was somehow behind the attack. Certainly, while we are equal opportunity in looking for violent extremism of any ideology, we have not seen any evidence of anarchist violence or people subscribing to Antifa ideology in connection with the 6th, said Wray. But that didn't stop Republicans on the committee from attempting to bait Wray into putting left-wing violence on an even playing field with far-right violence, and demand the threats receive equal attention and resources. The hearing was the first time that Wray has testified publicly since the Capitol riot, which left 5 dead and hundreds injured. Wray was unequivocal in his condemnation of the attack. That siege was criminal behavior, and behavior that we, the FBI, view as domestic terrorism, he said. Even though Tuesday's hearing was intended to discuss domestic terror issues in light of the violence at the Capitol, and despite mounting evidence that Proud Boys and Oath Keepers were heavily involved in both the planning and the execution of the riots, those groups took a back seat to the discussion. Proud Boys were mentioned a mere 4 times in the nearly 4-hour-long hearing. Oath Keepers were mentioned twice. Antifa, meanwhile, was name-checked 9 times. Are you serious? And Portland was mentioned 7 times. In some cases, Antifa was brought up by Democrats who were apparently trying to make a point to their Republican colleagues. Wray said that the mob that stormed the Capitol included militia violent extremists like Proud Boys or Oath Keepers, as well as racially motivated violent extremists, specifically white supremacists. He also acknowledged recent analysis by George Washington University, which found that more than half of the 257 arrests fell into the category of inspired believers, individuals who were incited to violence despite having no direct relationship to extremist groups. More and more, the threat we face as a country is what we call the inspired attacks, said Wray. No formal membership in an organization, no clear command and control or direction. That's much more challenging to pursue. There's less time to connect whatever dots there are, and then there are also the First Amendment dimensions of people's inspiration and ideology. The outsized role Antifa played in Tuesday's hearing is consistent with what seems to be a return by the GOP to familiar rhetorical tropes, now that the dust has settled from the Capitol riot. In the last week, lawmakers from both the House and Senate have argued that Antifa or left-wing violence be treated with the same moral repudiation as white supremacist violence. They've pointed to the standoff between They pointed to the standoff between federal agents and left-wing protesters in Portland, Oregon last summer, for example, as a parallel to the mob violence that unfolded at the Capitol. Last week, House Republicans invited Andy Ngo, who has built an entire career on the threat of the Antifa boogeymen, while secretly palling around with right-wing extremists to testify on domestic terrorism. There, GOP members discussed at length the involvement of John Sullivan, a left-wing extremist who has shown up to Black Lives Matter protests and is known as a troubled individual in the Capitol riots. Meanwhile, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, who sits on the Judiciary Committee, spoke at CPAC over the weekend and opined, "We've seen what happens when people lose the nerve to defend America. Last summer, chaos and riots engulfed our streets." Cotton didn't make a single mention of the attempted insurrection at the Capitol. "We will never bend the knee to a politically correct mob, ever." They would rather have the world bend the knee to an unpolitically correct mob trying to take over the country. Ray acknowledged that there are ongoing investigations into some of the events that took place by the federal courthouse in Portland and at Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in Seattle last summer. He said that some of those domestic terror investigations, which he calls anarchist violent extremism investigations, was focusing on some of the most dangerous individuals involved in conduct over the summer. But Ray stated repeatedly Tuesday that white supremacist extremism poses a persistent evolving threat, makes up the biggest chunk of the FBI's domestic terrorism portfolio. He also added that white supremacist extremists were responsible for the most lethal attacks over the last decade. See, this is even worse than I thought. This is what I read. Here we go. Are you listening? Just one murder. Just one murder has been attributed to an anti-fascist in the last 25 years, according to The Guardian. That's one murder in 25 years. A self-proclaimed anti-fascist protester shot and killed a far-right protester in Portland late last summer. While there have been other fatalities linked to broader left-wing activism, largely targeting police officers in recent years, the vast majority of extremism-related deaths are attributed to right-wing violence. The Guardian counted at least 329 deaths at the hands of right-wing actors since 1994. More than half of those have been since 2010. 329. From the outset of Tuesday's hearing, it was clear that it would be once again an opportunity for lawmakers to treat domestic terrorism like a political football, rather than an opportunity to understand the very real and active networks of extremists who are currently recruiting, radicalizing, and plotting online and offline. Committee Chairman Dick Durbin fired warning shots across the aisle in his opening statement. "Let's stop pretending that the threat of Antifa is equivalent to the white supremacist threat," said Durbin. "Vandalizing the federal courthouse in Portland is a crime, but it's not equivalent to the violent attempt to overturn the election or mass shooting targeting minorities." He added that the false equivalence was an insult to victims of far-right extremism over the years. I agree 100%. Ranking member Senator Chuck Grassley countered, saying that taking a narrow review of these matters would be intellectually dishonest. "We're not serious about tackling domestic extremism if we only focus on white supremacy movements, which isn't the only ideology that's responsible for murders and violence." You're right. There's also MAGA. There's also Proud Boys. There's also so many Nazis. I guess a lot of those are white supremacy movements. But anyway, adding later, "We did have an admitted Antifa adherent in Portland murder a conservative protester." Yes, that one murder, that one horrible murder, is the same as everything. Projects GOP tied to Pelosi's Schumer dropped from virus bill. So again, they couldn't get the bill through. And this is what happens. This is a story by Kevin Freaking, the of the Associated Press on March 3rd, 2021, from Washington. Republicans opposing $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package that passed the House have pointed to two transportation projects as examples of pork that would politically benefit Democrat leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Now those projects are out of the bill. Drew Hamill, a spokesperson for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, said the Senate parliamentarian has ruled that a subway extension through downtown San Jose did not meet requirements for inclusion in the bill because it is part of a pilot project. The project was set to receive about $141 million under the bill that passed in the House. The parliamentarians' rulings are generally respected by the Senate. Also, the $1.5 million in funding to maintain and operate a bridge connecting Canada and the United States and upstate New York, Schumer's home state, has been removed by Senate drafters of the bill. The projects represent a tiny fraction of the overall bill's cost. They became popular talking points for Republicans because that's what Republicans do, right? Like they just latch on to whatever bullshit and then they just like smear it into the ground and say and lie and say whatever bullshit, and nobody ever fact checks the Republicans. They always fact check fucking Democrats, but nobody fact checks the Republicans. Lining up in opposition to the measure, which they say is bloated and unfocused. The subway extension was described as Speaker Pelosi's pork subway project, even though it is located 50 miles away from her district. Now that the two projects that Republicans misled the public about in the House bill have been removed, it is unclear how Republicans will justify their opposition to the American Rescue Plan, which has strong bipartisan support among the public, Hamill said. The Senate bill is expected to largely mirror the House-approved package, with the most glaring divergence the Senate's dropping of language boosting the federal minimum wage to $15 hourly. Democrats are using special rules that will let them avoid GOP filibusters that would require them to garner an impossible 60 votes to approve the legislation. Shortly before Pelosi's office confirmed that funding for the rail project had been removed, Bernice Alaniz of the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority in California explained that the $141 million slated for the project would help ensure it keeps moving at the planned schedule. Construction is set to begin in 2022. Local and state sources are putting up 3/4 of the funding for the extension, among the highest match rates for similar projects across the country. It really is an essential transit alternative for a highly congested commute corridor, and it serves two large universities, San Jose State and Santa Clara University, Alaniz said. So I know some of the criticisms are like, oh, it's for the high-tech oligarchs, but we serve transit-dependent workers, and we serve a large percentage of students going to these colleges. The Trump administration boasted of its efforts to fund the rail project when it approved $125 million in federal matching dollars back in 2019. This administration is focused on expediting infrastructure projects, said the then Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. She added that the federal investment would help area residents benefit from these improvements as quickly as possible. So this was originally something that Trump had in effect, and now Republicans are against it just because the liberals are in power. That's it. They don't even read this stuff. They just, liberals, and these are the people you guys are voting for. These are the people who run the government. They're children. They're fucking toddlers, and it's unimaginable. Last week, Senator John Cornyn, R. Texas, described funding to Representative of Texas, a Republican, described funding to operate and maintain the Seaway International Bridge over the St. Lawrence River in upstate New York as part of an unrelated liberal wish list. But Schumer said on the Senate floor that the request for funding for the bridge did not come from him, and in fact had come from the Trump administration 5 months ago. He said revenues needed to maintain the bridge had collapsed with no one using the bridge due to the pandemic. I learned about it being in the bill when I read about it in the newspaper, Schumer said. The coronavirus bill has hundreds of billions of dollars for schools and colleges, COVID-19 vaccines and testing, mass transit systems, renters, and small businesses. It also has money for child care tax breaks for families with children and assistance for states willing to expand Medicaid coverage for low-income residents. And the final story of the night. GOP rejects childcare money in Idaho for very modern reason. Moms should stay home. Oh yes, that makes a lot of sense. This is a story by Paul Bless on Vice.com for April 3rd. March 4th, 2021. Idaho Republicans killed a bill to get $6 million in free federal money for childcare and literacy because apparently moms need to stay home and not let the government turn their kids into little social justice activists. That was a message sent earlier this week when the heavily GOP-skewing state House narrowly rejected a federal grant to support a whole host of early child care initiatives, including helping parents with child care. Republican Representative Charlie Shepard argued that helping moms who have to work would be in fact a bad thing. What? I don't think anybody does a better job than mothers in the home, and any bill that makes it easier or more convenient for mothers to come out of the home and let others raise their children, I don't think that's a good direction for us to be going in. Shepard said during the debate Tuesday. We are really hurting the family unit in the process. What about the families that are only a single mother? What about them, you motherfucking dumbass piece of shit? To be fair, Shepard did apologize Wednesday, saying he intended to compliment mothers in every possible way, but that he failed miserably. But the bill ultimately failed, meaning the legislature rejected millions in free money that would have helped childhood literacy as well. The Idaho legislature is one of the most staunchly Republican in the country, with just 12 Democrats among the House's 70 members. But initially, the grant had broad support from top Idaho Republicans and business groups, including Governor Brad Little, U.S. Senator Jim Risch, and Mike Crapo, and the State Chamber of Commerce, according to the spokesman review in Idaho Education News. A study was conducted, and essentially they said that 50% of Idaho is in an early childhood education desert. Republican Representative Paul Amador, who sponsored the bill, told fellow legislators. So people just don't have access to childcare in all parts of the state. But ultimately, the bill failed by one vote. Initially, it was a tie, but Democratic Representative John McCrosky switched his vote to opposing it. McCrosky later said he switched for procedural reasons, so the bill could be brought up again later. Sure, meanwhile, mothers are suffering now. Other Republicans who voted down the bill suggest that the grant, which was awarded by the Trump administration, was a ploy to turn Idaho kids into little activists. Again, awarded by the Trump administration, and yet these morons are against it just because it's now being brought forth by liberals. It's just it's unimaginable to me how dumb and how obviously trolling all these conservatives are. They're all trolls. They're all literally internet trolls. And they should all be stripped of their titles. They should all be taken out of government. They are traitors. And I cannot stand reading this story anymore, but you can read it by clicking on that button. It's there. Good luck. Also, the Geekly Weekly this week, I go on and on about some pity party, and you can read that if you want. I'm kind of glad this episode is going long, so I can just skip that and forget about it. But yeah, we're skipping it. Geekly Weekly comments and questions and stats. You can send them to aldon@gmail.com or DM me at Andrew Geczy, at Andrew Geczy, that's AndrewGeczy, on Twitter, and at WingCommander4 on Instagram, that's WINGCOMMANDERIV on Instagram, or comment below. Just comment below, it's so easy. I made a bunch of books free on Amazon, so take advantage of that. Dakota Sade helped boost me up to 32 free downloads in 1 day. Actually, I think it was up to 54 now. That's a new record for Amazon and me. Hopefully some of those people review their books. That's all I can say, because that would help more people find it. That would be great. My numbers on my Patreon have been pretty consistently strong for the Patreon. Like 30 people a day, almost, which isn't bad at all. Our friend from Twitter, Gorky, posted on YouTube that he watched one of my Geekly Weekly video editions and found my voice soothing. Thanks, man. If only more people thought so, that would be great. And I appreciate the good words. Now then, let's get to the spiel at the end of the episode. My name is Andrew Geczy, and my brand is 99% Geek, found at 99geek.ca. I'm a writer, writing monthly chapters of novels like episodes of TV shows, releasing them in 4 weekly segments, a teaser and 3 acts on Sundays on my Patreon page. Every month it's a different book, over a range of genres, and they sometimes even cross over and connect. At the end of the month, the finished chapter is added to the PDFs attached at the bottom of every post. Finally, the finished books are self-published on Amazon. There's a dark fantasy story about a post-apocalyptic world where powerful royals rule and enslave the remaining people struggling to survive on the last remaining landmass. You know what? I'm going to put the blog at the very end of this. So if you want to skip it, you can, because it's just me crying about my life. But if you want to hear me cry about my life, then you can listen at the very end of this. Where was I? Let me do this paragraph again. There's a dark fantasy story about a post-apocalyptic world where powerful royals rule and enslave the remaining people struggling to survive on the last remaining landmass. There's also a sci-fi story about a people on a dying world who have built a ship to a new one, but their project is almost brought down by a terrorist organization within their own ranks. Finally, there's a crossover story where characters from my other books are brought into the distant future, where the princess of a far advanced civilization, one that lives in a solar system-sized megastructure around a Dyson Sphere, needs help defeating her twisted, power-hungry brother. And all these stories will be outside the paywall for all to enjoy as new episodes release weekly, and the finished chapters will be attached at the bottom of every post on the site in convenient PDF format readable on computers, tablets, ebook readers, and phones. But that's not all my stories. There's also urban fantasy tales about a teenage girl turned into a vampire against her will, or a scorned lover investigating paranormal phenomena, or a journalist covering news and politics in the Middle East, and there's a fantasy story about a fallen angel trying to stop the end of the world. All these stories are published and available on Amazon, and are also safe and sound behind the paywall in PDF format attached to an archive at the top of my Patreon page. Only viewable by subscribers, my entire library of work, thousands of pages worth, is easily accessible to every subscriber at any level. There's even a Geekly Weekly blog which covers all the news you may have missed over the week, as well as ranks the week's worth of television and makes predictions on what new pop culture things might be in the public consciousness for the next week. Finally, I do video game streams, both multiplayer matchmaking as well as single-player campaign playthroughs. You can see me play games like Final Fantasy, Call of Duty, Hitman, and more. You can see it all in one place. So stay tuned and maybe subscribe. It's only $1 and the support you show will go a very long way, I promise. There are also higher tiers. Give $5 one month and you can name a character or a location or suggest a thing you might want to see. Basically, you get to give a noun, and then I promise to incorporate that noun into one of my stories somehow. Maybe not the same month you gave the suggestion, but within 3 months guaranteed. No matter how crazy, you can't sabotage me, I promise. Think of it like a fun improv game. And you can keep giving nouns for every month you pay at the $5 tier, or if you give $10, you don't get 2 nouns, but you can give a description to go with your noun. Describe the personality of your character, or the look of your location, or the importance of your item. For $10, you get a noun and a description. You can also give $1 towards supporting my efforts at video game streaming or my weekly blog if that's more where your interests lie. I'm as poor as it gets, living paycheck to paycheck and sometimes starving, so I understand if you are too. I don't want to take food out of your mouths. Your attention is enough. Say something, comment here, at the very least follow me on Twitter at Andrew Geczy or Instagram at WingCommander4. Live long and prosper. No, you know what? I'm going to read that last bit after I do the Geekly blog. Alright, the Geekly blog. Here we go. I'm going to read it fast. The week started out alright. I made some good progress in Hitman and felt like I was falling into a groove. I was even going to spend some serious time today on my book, give it some extra TLC. But I woke up this morning to, well, kind of a rude awakening. It all happened the night before. I think I'd previously mentioned that I'd been using OkCupid after it kept emailing me. I had previously deleted all dating apps because they only lead to depression. It had a web app, so I'd randomly swipe on the top matches it would send me in the web app every once in a while on the website. And that would just be it. Just be like, I guess she's cute. Oh, she seems like she's kind of nerdy and cool. Maybe I'll just send her a message saying, hey, I hope you find someone cool on here. Live long and prosper. And that would be it. You know, like I wouldn't expect to ever get matches because I never get matches on these things. Anyway, I matched yesterday with someone who seemed amazing. She was a comic book writer, and surprisingly, she didn't immediately attack me. Thanked me for my kind intro. So I introduced myself, told her some things about me, and since she mentioned her work on her profile, I looked it up. It was good stuff. Also mentioned in her profile, she also mentioned her profile adding her to social media, so I added her Instagram and saw more of her artwork. I told her how amazing her artwork was, that I had added her, and made a joke about internet stalking. Finally, realizing that all of that was a lot to send to someone with no response since the first message, I finished with saying that I was sorry for coming on so strong, and if I weirded her out at all, I didn't mean to, and wouldn't blame her for, unmatching with me. I woke up in the next morning to find out that she had, in fact, unmatched with me. No response, nothing. So on her Instagram, where I was still following her, I sent her a message apologizing for for weirding her out. That I get I'm not normal, that people aren't interested in a queer but straight sort of feminine man, and that it's fine. I finished with that I hope one day I would make it as a writer, and that she might look over at a comic convention and see me and think, I should have given that guy a chance. Then I said, live long and prosper, may the force be with you, and I used a Scott Pilgrim meme, letting her know that I would leave her alone forever now. I might come on a bit strong, I'm sorry. However, I don't think I deserved what came next. I then unfollowed her and deleted the message thread, so I wouldn't be compelled to bother her anymore, and I took a shower. When I came out of the shower, I was greeted to this response. It reads as follows. You need help. No, I will not regret unmatching, and you will not be in my industry in a professional capacity. Leave me alone. Learn to be normal. Call a helpline or try therapy if you have insurance or enough money, because what you did is not normal, is how that ended. Um, what an insanely over the top hostile response, completely out of nowhere. I did literally nothing to her besides perhaps overshare. And her response, learning that I'm a queer man, tell me I need to seek therapy, like reversion therapy, to be normal. Normal. And tell me that apparently, because I'm not normal, I will never make it as a writer. And again, I never said anything bad. I only complimented her art and told her I'd leave her alone after she unmatched with me. I didn't even say, like, you'll regret not dating me. At least that's not what I meant when I said I'd make it as a writer one day. Anyway, I have said time and again that I get nothing but bullying and attacks and abuse on dating apps, and I just wanted to show you the proof that I'm not making this up. This isn't a one-time thing. There's a picture. That's the proof. This has happened hundreds of times. This was one of the nicer ones. I've had people immediately call me faggot the moment they match with me, or say I'm a mama, I must be a mama's boy, or I must live in my parents' basement because look at me. You know, they look at one picture of me and they say something horrible, and then they'll unmatch. And it's happened over and over again. You know, like sometimes I won't even see it. You know, like they'll unmatch before I even notice it, but then sometimes I will notice it because like they'll wait long enough for the email to go to my for me to get the email saying that they sent it, and then they unmatch. So then I got the email and I'm like, well, that's weird because there's nothing here, but there's an email here with saying horrible things, nasty things, faggot, SJW, like just the worst shit, and I hate it so much. Fake nice guy, that I must be an incel. Just on and on and on, that I must be a monster, that I'm a liar, that all by people who don't know me at all. It's happened over and over again. Everyone on every app treats me like I'm a freak and a creep and a monster when I've never done anything to anyone and I only try to be honest, open, and genuine. Every time they treat me like I'm the monster, while enabling actual monsters and wondering why all men are awful. Life is seriously the worst. And after getting that message, you can imagine I was very depressed, and it's been very hard to get anything done today. So that's my story, and that was yesterday. That was yesterday, and like I literally like I got nothing done all day, and then I was gonna go to bed and then wake up and do the whole websitey thing, but I couldn't sleep. So now I'm up all day going crazy, losing my mind. And yeah, I'm sure some of it is depression, and that sucks. So that's my story, wasting time in my blog for another sad pity party for me. I hate it. I don't want to be this guy. Did I mention life sucks? I have absolutely zero friends or anyone who cares about me at all in my life. And every time I find someone I think is like me, and I try to open up to them, that response above is exactly what I get each and every time. There's something wrong with me. I need to be more normal, more masculine, more toxic, and less honest and open and genuine. It's unimaginable, and yet there is a proof right above you. It's happened for the 200th time. That's why I deleted all the apps. That's why I'm so lonely and shitty and life sucks all the time. And that's why I didn't want to read all that, because it's just me crying about life and everybody's just going to call me an incel again and all this, that, and the other. But I'm not an incel. I don't support anything they believe in. I just would love to even just to find a friend. Anyway, live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Long live Marceline the Vampire Queen. We are the 99% Geek.